Hey everyone, welcome back to Success Secrets Revealed, and we have a great episode for you today. We have Mitzi Perdue. Her husband was Frank Perdue. Everybody knows Frank Perdue, but she is an amazing person in her own right, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about that. But first, what I'd like to do is, again, I want to introduce the show, the reason for the show, the sponsor, and then we're going to bring on Mitzi Perdue, affectionately known as Aunt Mitzi. Okay. The show is called Success Secrets Revealed. I bring on subject matter experts in various different fields, so there's a little bit of something for everyone, no matter what your area of expertise in or products or services you sell. What happened was I have a radio show called Internet Marketing and Business Solutions with Ronald Couming weekly every Monday, and it's 1.7 million reach roughly. But what happens from there is because of COVID, they stopped manning the station. So instead of not giving content and not interviewing people and helping people. I didn't get paid to do the radio show. I don't get paid to do this, nor do my guests. This is just us giving a gift. So I pivoted and I bought this live stream system. So now we can still bring you some great information. Our sponsor is my company, RCS Online Solutions. We help business owners and entrepreneurs, much like you, achieve even greater success by attracting, converting, and retaining their ideal customers and clients in various forms. At the end of the day, you can have the best products, the best services, the best websites, the best everything. If people can't find you when they're looking for the solutions or the products you provide, then they can't consider you and they certainly can't hire you, okay? So you've got to work on your online presence or, you're losing tens of thousands of dollars. So now we're going to talk about Mitzi. That's the real deal for today. So Mitzi Perdue, she is an author, a speaker, and a businesswoman. Mitzi Perdue holds a BA with an honors degree from Harvard University and a MPA from Georgetown, Washington University. She is a past president of the 35,000-member American Agri-Women, a former syndicated columnist for Scripps Howard, and her television series, Country Magazine, was syndicated to 76 stations. She's the founder of CERES, which is CRES Farms, the family-owned company, and owns commercial and residential real estate and plus agricultural land, including vineyards and that sell wine grapes to wineries such as Mondavi, Bogle, Folie, Deux, and Toasted Head. I butchered those guys. Please know I don't drink. She can tell us a little bit better about that. Mitzi's Perdue on how to make your family business last gives practical advice on how a family business can develop a culture that supports keeping the family business in the family. So let's just bring Mitzi on because she has such an amazing history. I want you to hear it straight from her. Mitzi, thank you so much. Hey.
Oh gosh, I loved your introduction. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I butchered the names of some of your wineries, so sorry about that. I'll blame it on my Boston accent, and I didn't have my glasses.
So you're from Boston. I'm from Boston.
Are you really? You live in Boston now?
No, I live on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is where the Perdue Chicken headquarters is. But I was born in Concord, and then lived in Lincoln, and then Boston itself. How about you?
I grew up in Boston my whole life, mostly South Boston, Dorchester, Hyde Park.
Yeah.
I moved around the state for many years. Now I live in Billerica, which I think is 2 towns away from Concord right now. I think it's Bedford, Concord. So I'm very familiar with that whole area. And Cambridge, I see you went to Harvard.
I did. And interestingly, the Sheraton hotel chain, I don't think this is widely known, but it began in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow. Is that Sheraton right there? There is a Sheraton in Cambridge. Is that the original one?
I believe it is. Although, frankly, I'm not sure because the company began in the 1930s and we sold it in 1967 when my father died. But it is a New England-based company.
Wow. Who knew? Not only New England-based, it's Boston-based. That's even better.
The Sheraton headquarters was 470 Atlantic Avenue in Boston, and that's where my father spent most of his life.
Wow, that's a nice district down there. It's called like the waterfront now, the wharfs and all that. So good for you. And tell us a little bit more about you and your family history, because I was going to touch on that, and I could see that where I was starting to, where I broke, it did talk about your in-laws and your family. So tell us a little bit more about your history, your family history, who they are, and then we'll kind of like come up to date.
Okay, my family history, it's so appropriate for today when there's just a whole lot of things that worry us in the world, like great big terrible worries like pandemics and social unrest and whatever else. Back in the 1930s, which was when the Sheraton hotel chain got its start, everybody was running away from, everybody in real estate was running away from hotels. And Father was a contrarian, and he bought one hotel and made enough of a success of it that with the profits, he bought another. And with the profits of those two, he bought another 2 and then another 4 until finally it grew to 400. Wow. And I just love to share what I know and what very few people would know unless you're a daughter of what some of his attitudes for success were, because I think they're timeless and I think they apply to today, including don't get discouraged or don't give in to discouragement.
Yeah, that's very timely. Yes, please go on. I don't want to interrupt.
Well, actually, give me a second to get a sip of tea.
Please take your time.
All right, I'm good now. I think I am. When you cough, you worry about COVID, but I kind of think I already had it before. But the tickle's gone, and I would now just love to share secrets from my father, because as a little girl, I was forever asking him, how did you do it? Because it was clear as could be to me that my daddy was a really successful man. I mean, if you're an 8-year-old and you see that your summer home has a ballroom that holds 200 people, you got a clue that he's done something right.
Yeah. Most people's ballrooms only hold 50.
Yeah, so ours was quite bigger than yours.
I didn't have a ballroom. You can believe that. Where was the family home? In Concord?
No, the family home was in Beacon Hill, Boston, number 8 Lewisburg Square.
Wow. Yeah.
But back to Father and me as a little girl being aware that there was a story behind who he was. I'm forever asking him, how did you do this? And one of the stories, which I think is just so appropriate for today, is he told me what would happen when he would take over a hotel. And the period I'm talking about is, let's say it's 1933, height of the Great Depression, 25% unemployment, malaise everywhere. Nobody knew when this awful thing was going to end. And Father bought his first hotel. He told me that what I'm about to describe, he did with all his hotels, all 400 by the time of his death. What he would do was, the day he took possession, he'd invite every single employee to come into the hotel's ballroom. And there might be 400 people, there might be 800 people. But Father would understand that everybody in his audience, coming to meet the new owner, is feeling demoralized because they're afraid they're going to get fired. Because normally when you take over something that's teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, you probably want to get new blood. You probably want to take care of your uncles and nephews, so the people come into that room feeling, I'm going to lose my job today. I'm going to be on the breadline. There's 25% unemployment. I'm not going to get another job. This is the end of my world.
Wow.
Well, Father knew that they're probably not going to listen to a word he said if they're so worried about this huge pain point of, I'm going to be fired. So the first words out of his mouth every time was, every one of you keeps your job. I want you to stay in your job because nobody knows your job better than you do. Nobody knows this hotel better than you do. And I have a job, and it's to give you the resources and the support to show the world just how good you are. And you're going to see in 2 or 3 months, this is going to be the best served, most popular hotel in the city. And not only that, it's going to be financially sound, and it's going to be a shining light to all the other businesses in the city that things can turn around and get better. You'll see. Well, First of all, imagine if you've been in that audience, you went from just the depths of despair to feeling, no, here's a man who believes in me and who's going to give me the support to show just how good I am. Well, that's the first part of the story, but there's a second part. The second part is, Father told me, that the next day, all the employees would get to see that there were dozens and dozens of workmen, like plumbers, electricians, decorators, coming in to refurbish the hotel, which you'd expect because a hotel that's teetering on bankruptcy's probably gone to seed. So you have to spend money bringing it up, improving it. But, and here's, to my mind, the important part of what he told me, those employees who are watching, this cavalcade of people coming in, upgrading the hotel, they didn't go to the areas that the public would see. No, they went to the areas that only the employees would see, like the employee dining room, the employee lockers, showers, even the excellent kitchens. And so I asked Father, why did you spend money there, instead of places that would get you money back from the paying public? And he said, because I wanted to communicate to the people who worked there how important they were. And this was a very concrete way of doing it. And he said, men and women have a compulsion to live up to or down to your expectations. And this was a way of signaling to them how important they were and that he expected a lot from them.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
All right, that's part 2 of the story. In part 3, which I'm kind of in love with this because it sounds so modern, and yet he figured it out, I'm doing math in my head, 90 years ago. He figured out the following. He told me that he could have stood up in front of the 400 or so employees and told them, shape up, do a better job, or you're fired. But he said, that's an ineffective way to get people to do what you want. And he said, what's wrong with it is you can change behavior a little bit, but people will do it grudgingly. They'll do it with resentment. They're not going to go out of the way to help you succeed. So he said, intimidation is a bad way to persuade people. Then he said another thing that he could have done, and I'll tell you ahead of time, there are 3 ways, and 2 he doesn't like, and the 3rd he thought was great. Number 2, one of the bad ones, is bribery. He told me that he could have stood up there in front of them and said, do a good job and there's a raise for you, or do a good job and I've got bonuses. But he said, that's an ineffective way to get people to do what you want because it's too transactional. They'll do the absolute minimum to get the reward. And that's not what you want. So what's the 3rd? The 3rd way of getting people to do what you want is inspire, don't require. He holds forth a vision for them of how things could be better. And part of this vision that he's holding in front of people is, he said, a leader's job is to give people a better vision of themselves so that a person isn't, a woman isn't making beds or waiting table, and, a guy isn't tending bar or carrying bags or whatever. No, they're part of a great big team that's working together to make this the best hotel in the city and to make it an example for everybody else, and things can turn around. So inspire, don't require. And the results of that, Father said the reason Sheraton was a success, he told me this, was the people on every level were, they owned it. They loved their jobs. They were part of something bigger than themselves. And the end result was, there was a saying at Sheraton that if you started working for Sheraton, you probably worked for my father for life.
Wow.
And you made a habit of going the extra mile and figuring out how to make the whole enterprise better. Is that not cool?
That's amazing. And it really helps people, because you're right. When companies taken over, the first thing you think of is that the person coming in wants to clean house, figuring that whoever's there was part of the failing process and start fresh with new people. But what he did is he basically came in and said, you're all keeping your jobs. And then he brought in people to fix their areas before he addressed the money-making areas. I mean, business owners today could certainly learn massive from that. I mean, that, who was in Napoleon Hill's book. I mean, some of these things you're talking about, I hope are reflected in that book, because your father certainly could have written a book with, some real world stories about things that are effective,
Well, I'll tell you something else about it, and another secret of success. And I call these timeless secrets of success because they count today just as much as they did back then. Father certainly read Napoleon Hill. And not only was he a self-help book addict, I mean, he was forever reading ways to improve himself. But one of the ones that I think was life-changing for him was Dale Carnegie. In fact, I think Dale Carnegie should pay me for telling this story. But he loved Dale Carnegie. He took the course. But both my mother and my father made it a point to read the Dale Carnegie book of How to Win Friends and Influence People. They'd read it every 10 years because they said the wisdom is so great that it benefits you to keep refreshing your mind about it. So, Father's premise was that the most important thing in success was people skills. And if you'll allow me to jump off on that, there's something else that he did that might be helpful to maybe at least one person who's listening.
Excellent. Please do.
And maybe many, because who knows?
Yeah, please do.
But if you personally have any trace of shyness or maybe Asperger's, or you're just not good at human relations, I want to share with you the story of my father, because Father became one of the most gracious, popular hosts possible. I mean, it was his superpower. He wasn't born with it. When he was 26 years old, he got engaged to my mother. My mother was a Southern belle from West Virginia, and she comes to Cambridge, Massachusetts to meet her mother-in-law. And her mother-in-law tells her, "Molly, don't marry Ernest. He can never stick to anything. There's something not right about him. You're going to end up poor." And Mother said, "I don't care. I love him." And they married. But Father was kind of shaken by this, with his own mother saying that he'd never amount to anything. So in response to that, he went to the Yellow Pages to see where he could get help, and he found a career guidance counselor. It was the company Johnson O'Connor. And wow. It absolutely changed his life, but possibly not in the way that Johnson O'Connor intended. Johnson O'Connor spent a whole day with him giving various personality tests. And at the end of the whole day, he gave the analysis that never in his life, Johnson O'Connor is speaking, never in his life had he come across somebody who was so absolutely, totally lacking in human relations skills. He said, you're clearly a very bright man, and you could have a career as a scientist as long as you were locked away in a laboratory somewhere and not interacting with people. But your human relations skills, I mean, they don't just suck, they make you unqualified for most of the work. And that's why you've had no success in what you've tried so far.
Wow.
Well, Father took this as a challenge. And he actually figured out that getting along with people was the key to all possible success. And if he was a walking catastrophe at this, he decided to do something about it. And so he began reading books in psychology. He began taking courses in psychology. He certainly, I'm not sure when Dale Carnegie came on the scene, but he absolutely endorsed everything Dale Carnegie said. And he made it a project to crack the code of how to get along with people, how to understand people, to know on a deep, deep level what makes people tick, what motivates them. And the end result was, because he didn't leave it to accident learning how to get along with people, he studied it the way somebody might study for a PhD. He became incredibly good at it. And I have a guess that he wouldn't have known to stand up in front of his new employees and assure them just from the get-go, you're keeping your job. Or he wouldn't have known how important it was to motivate them by saying, I believe in you. I don't think he would have known all of this if he hadn't had this human relations deficit at age 26,
Right.
and worked not just to overcome it, but to transcend it, so that I think it's fair to say that he was closely, uniquely gifted at getting along with people and motivating people, and just a deep understanding of human nature. But it didn't come natural. He studied it.
I love it. And it was a catalyst. He had something that somebody else said triggered him to set out on this course, and just look the massive impact he had, not just on your father, but that your father then went out and created the entire Sheridan Corporation and all the people they employed, and all the things for all those years. So you never really know, like when you're talking or dealing with somebody, what you say or what you do, how it affects them, but the ripple effect and how it affects who they affect. So that's an amazing story about that gentleman, but it's also an amazing story that your father was perceptive enough to not become defensive. And when this person said that to him, they become defensive and then put up a wall and say, what do you know? Or maybe go that route and try to become a scientist. He saw himself as, I'm only as strong as my weakest link. And then he went out and he tried to develop his weaknesses to make them to be stronger, so he would be more whole as a person and presenter. So kudos. I mean, excellent stories. Thank you.
Well, Ronald, you know what's giving me joy as we speak? I think you summarized it just perfectly. I love kind of the feedback of that somebody else really gets what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing it. Now, can you tell us, because we got about 12 minutes, can you tell us about you now? What are you doing in your book? You got this great book, and how's that going? Because that was like the first half, and then we have the whole Perdue. I mean, your family's just first the Sheratons, then the Perdues. I mean, you guys are just like you're like legends in the business industry.
Well, allow me to say a few moments about my late husband, because I admired him absolutely as much as I admired my father, possibly more. I mean, this was just a totally good man. And like my father, he overcame all sorts of deficits. He started out as a guy just super shy. He came from a farm family in a small, the nearest town probably had a population of a few hundred. And yet this shy farm boy learned how to become a genius at advertising and became actually known throughout the world for a tough man. It takes a tough man to make a tender chicken. And he went from no one to 20,000. And he overcame his deficit of having just a very narrow background, but he studied it he studied marketing the way my late father studied human relations. And then you asked me about me.
Yes, please.
It's much more fun for me to talk about the two men that I admired the most. But I will share what my story is. My story, and again, it's something that there may be somebody listening to us who might be, I don't know, influenced by this story. But up until somewhere around age 34, I'd never done much of what I'd wanted in life. I absolutely loved the idea of television, radio, communications. But at age 34, I was growing rice in Northern California, and I loved it, and I felt it was really important. But it wasn't what I really wanted to do with my life. And an event happened that changed my life as suddenly as my father's life got changed by you suck at human relations. And it's the following. I had a tenant farmer. In my rice farms, I didn't go out and plant the rice myself. I did have a tenant farmer who did it. And to protect the guilty, we will call him Peter Smith. Well, Peter Smith was an absolute genius. He had an IQ of over 200.
Wow.
And that's like 1 in a million. And his whole life goal, almost from the moment that he learned that he had this extraordinary gift, was he wanted to give back to the world. He'd been granted this incredible thing, and he had a plan, and it was to write a great book. The book would be Life, an Owner's Manual. And he would take all the wisdom and all the knowledge from all of recorded human history and put it together with wisdom that would help people. That was his goal. Now, he had this goal at age 20, and he naturally enough thought, well, it would be really presumptuous of me to write this book now. I've got to get a little more seasoning. Well, at age 30, he felt he should wait, at 40, 50, until finally at age 68. And he's employed by me at this point, still hasn't written his book. And he gets diagnosed with terminal heart disease. He was told that they couldn't keep him alive long enough to go to the Mayo Clinic to have quadruple bypass surgery. Well, I mean, that's a death sentence. And if you and I were told that we are going to die, it would be as depressing as anything that's ever happened to us in our lives, probably. But for him, I think it was even worse because his whole life's purpose, he could never do it. But then a miracle happened. There's something called the Pritikin Clinic that just has a fabulous record of diet, exercise, meditation, spirituality, just a whole bunch of things that help people with heart disease and other diseases too. But I happen to know about the heart disease part. He went there for 30 days. He came back after 30 days and he'd lost 15 pounds. He could walk like 10 miles. His heart had revascularized. He was no longer in pain.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, this is the most wonderful news in the world. And I tell him, Peter, I'm so happy for you. Write your book. And he says, yes, I just have to do a little more studying.
Poor Peter. Did he ever write it?
He lived till his mid-90s.
Wow.
The book. But at the moment when he told me that he needed to do just a little more studying, I knew that he never would. And as right as can be, he never did. And that was the transforming moment for me when I realized he didn't try. He did the one thing that guarantees failure. And I thought, look at my life. I haven't put myself out on a limb, the kind of place where you send in material for for publication or you audition for radio or television.
Yeah.
I hadn't dared do any of that because I was so scared of failure. And then when I watched Peter Smith and realized that his whole life was one gigantic failure because he never tried. And I thought, I'm going to turn my life around radically. I'm going to start putting myself out on a limb. I will start writing and submitting articles. And that was a miracle year for me because in the space of 1 year, I'd begun sending articles to the local newspapers and local magazines. I was syndicated in California by Capital News. And by the way, I got rejection things right and left, but I called every one of them paying your dues. And it was sort of against the rules. You get a rejection slip, I don't care who you are, it hurts. But I would make every effort that I could not to try to reframe the rejection letter. It wasn't that I'm a bad person. No, it's that I'm farther along the road to success because in the course of writing, I've probably become a better writer. And I began taking public speaking courses. I began taking business courses. I just did everything that I possibly could to prepare myself to get farther along towards what I really wanted, which was a career in communications. And I auditioned at a television station, the CBS affiliate, and I got the farm show. I did the Coast to Coast radio network. And then it occurred to me one day that I could make so much more money if I could syndicate my farm show and I'd rebrand it as Country Magazine. But how do you get syndicated? Well, I began studying that. And I took the Dale Carnegie salesmanship course. And the end result was that I got syndicated and paid mightily for 76 stations. The effort of producing one show, I would get paid 76 times for it.
Wow, nice. Good for you.
But the only reason it all worked was that when I got kicked in the teeth or fell on my face over and over again, because trust me, it happened. It's easier for me to talk about the successes than the failures. But But if I have the feeling that if you just keep trying and you don't get discouraged by this stack of rejection letters, if you keep on, just in the process of struggling to try, you're getting better and better at whatever it is you're trying at.
Absolutely. Plus, a lot of it is how you perceived it. I mean, when you got the rejection letters, they were in fact rejection letters, but you saw it and you just spun it in a way that you kind of made it a little more positive. You had to learn a little more. You had to do something different. You were already further along in the process. So I love the fact that your perception, carried you through. So you've given us some tremendous bits of history and knowledge here. Is there anything in the last 3 minutes, 5 minutes that you'd like to tell everybody?
I'd adore to talk about the book that I just wrote with Mark Victor Hansen.
Excellent. So for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to put you on the big screen. Please tell us about that.
Yay. Okay, with Mark Victor Hansen, he's my hero. And if you're not familiar with the name, I think I can almost guarantee that you're familiar with his work, because he's the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And this man has sold more than 500 million, not million, billion with a B, books. So my goodness, this man he's inspirational. I'm told he's had 56 bestsellers on the New York Times. So, I mean, this man really, really, really knows what he's doing, and he's inspirational. And possibly the greatest honor of my life is I've just co-authored a book with him. It's called How to Be Up in Down Times. And you can get it on Amazon. And you can look up under either Mark Victor Hansen or under Mitzi Perdue, or you can just look up How to Be Up. But the kind of thing that you'll get in it, and I proposed this idea to Mark in February. I said, between you, your stepson, Preston Weeks, who's the other co-author of this, I said, between the three of us, we have knowledge that could make a difference in people's lives. We can help them get through the down times. Now, between the three of us, I have a background which I didn't mention, but I'm also a science writer. Beginning in 1980, I wrote an environmental column, and that meant talking to scientists continually. So I'm billed as a science writer, and I also wrote the blog for the Academy of Women's Health and for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology News. So I have a science background, and I know probably a lot more than average about some of the psychology that it takes to be up, some of the mental attitudes. And between the three of us, I think we've produced something close to a masterpiece. We wrote it in about 2 weeks because we felt just a tremendous amount of urgency, because we had knowledge that could help people.
Wow, that's amazing. And the ensemble, the people you had in Preston, actually, I do one interview a day, but Preston Weeks was on today earlier at 1:00, and he talked about the book, and he held it up as well towards the end, but he didn't mention that he was Mark Victor Hansen's stepson. So that's amazing.
Let me share one just quick tip from it. And yeah, I hope this is useful, because I've heard from many people that it describes them and that the solution describes them. And that is, I think we should never underestimate the stress that the pandemic or social unrest causes us. I've read studies that for some people, it means afterwards that they'll get post-traumatic stress after this. For some people, it's they're thinking of ending their lives. It's just, there's a fantastic amount of stress involved in, that your future is just totally turned inside out.
Yeah.
And the result of that is, we know from, I think virtually all people who study this would agree with the following. When you're under sufficient stress, when your body, even it's low level, but really, really serious stress of the kind of the pandemic, your body gets flooded with cortisol and a few other stress drugs. And guess what happens? It means that your higher brain functions shut down, or at least it's like sand in the gears.
Yeah.
So if you're having trouble remembering things, maybe you walk into a room to get something and you can't remember what you came for, or you're trying to remember a name, or a phone number that you know really well. Or maybe you've been really good all your life at doing math in your head. Maybe you're an accountant even, I witnessed this recently, a woman who confessed to me that just basic math that she couldn't do before, just do it easily. She couldn't do now. She was afraid she was getting Alzheimer's. Well, the very good news that I can share with everybody is the story that I did from Johns Hopkins, one of the world's great memory experts. And he said, when you're under stress, expect your memory functions to decrease. It's not permanent. It's almost certainly not a sign of Alzheimer's. It's just the body's response to stress. And the way it works is, supposing, I don't know, tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. That's not the time to be doing math or remembering a face. No, you're all into fight or flight. That's what these stress hormones do to you. So one of the 40 tips in the book is, don't worry, you're probably not losing your mind. It's the most normal, predictable reaction to stress possible, which is your memory declines a little bit. When the stress goes away, your memory almost certainly will come back.
Oh, that's excellent, because right now, this pandemic going around is affecting so many people. Could you give the name of that book again?
Yes, it's How to Be Up in Down Times. But fortunately, Amazon, if you just type in How to Be Up, you don't have to type the full title. So just How to Be Up, and it'll come up for you. Excellent. Or if you can remember Mark Victor Hansen's name, you can get to it that way. Yeah. Or me, Mitzi Perdue, on Amazon. And then there is another way to get hold of me, and that is, if you would like to contact me about the book, write to me at my website. There's a contact form there, and I make a commitment to you. If you write to me, I'll answer, because I love.
Amazing, personally too. Yeah, and that book, I mean, I'm gonna get that book probably before the end of today. I mean, just listening to you, the stories that you've told, the history that you bring to the table. I mean, you lived, the entire history of the Sheratons and your husband being Frank Perdue, but then also working with people like Mark Victor Hansen and his son, Weeks. I mean, it's just amazing. So I highly recommend that people get this book. And your name is Mitzi Perdue. However, everybody affectionately calls you Aunt Mitzi. And I just want to say you've been a great guest. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd love it if you bought the book, because my father used to say one good idea can change your life, and several good ideas can make you more successful in life than you've ever dreamed of. And so I'd love to share some of these good ideas with you, how to be in down times.
Excellent. Can you show the book? Do you have it so people can see it? Do you have it up? Well, okay, Preston, who was on earlier, I did 2 today, and he did show the book, so people did see it.
Okay, I ordered it from Amazon, and I keep going every day to get my copies, and maybe it's downstairs right now, but I don't have it yet.
I'm kind of surprised that the publisher didn't ship you a box in the beginning anyhow. You have to get on Mark about that. He has a little bit of pull. He's only written 500 million books, right?
Maybe that's the solution, that he has the pull to get it done. Because it's my baby. I want to have it. I want to be able to show it, but
I love it. I'm going to look forward to ordering it. And I'm not joking for the listeners. Mark Victor Hansen, that was a while ago, too, in the Guinness World Book of Records, over 500 million, second only to the Bible. So he was a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago, too, him and his wife. So
here's something that I just got in the mail just before coming on.
What's that?
There's a woman from Taiwan who ordered 200 copies because she thought it was so helpful, and she's going to send it to everybody.
Excellent. See, that's, you mean the blessings just keep rolling. Mitzi, I want to thank you so much. You've been an incredible guest, and people who, if you came in towards the end, I highly recommend you go back and listen to this. I'm going to close out the show for now. Thank you, Mitzi.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. You've been listening to Mitzi Perdue on the Success Secrets Revealed radio TV live stream show. She talked about, now, if you don't know Mitzi Perdue, you might remember the name. Her husband was Frank Perdue, but that is only a part of the story. Her father created the Sheraton chain, And she talks about how he created the Sheraton change. It actually started right here in Boston, and how he created it. But then when he took over the businesses, how he went in and didn't fire everybody. He told them, you're not getting fired. And then he brought in plumbers and all these people, and he didn't bring them in to first fix the hotel. He brought them in to fix the employees' areas, because you can always, people will rise or they will fall to the level that you treat them at. And this man, it was just amazing. Go back. Mitzi does a much better example of explaining her father's past. The sponsor of this show is my company, Ronald Couming, from RCS Online Solutions. We help business owners and entrepreneurs much like you achieve even greater success by attracting, converting, and retaining your ideal customers and clients. And let's be honest, awareness equals opportunity. You can have the best products, the best services, the best website, the best pricing, but if people don't know who you are, they can't find you when they're searching for their solution. If they type in your name or your company's name and they find you, I'm telling you, that means nothing, because they're not searching that way. They're searching for the results, the solution, the product, the service that they need to solve their problem. If they know your name or your company's name, they're calling you, right? So make sure you're on the first page for the products and services and solutions you provide. And if you're not, contact us, because I will guarantee I will get you there before you pay me. So everybody, you have a great day.